The latest news, national issues, the political scene, and conversations with prominent personalities. All these firsthand at the forefront. Good morning. I am Attorney Karen Jimeno. The Bureau of Customs is on the roll, intensifying its crackdown on all types of smuggling. The warehouse raids uncovered billions of pesos of luxury vehicles, from Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royce, and Maseratis. The agency also discovered an attempt to resell 270 million pesos worth of contraband cigarettes, up for disposal since 2023. On Tuesday, more than 3 million pesos worth of unmarked fuels were intercepted at the Bicol region. Also on Tuesday, a Filipino passenger attempted to smuggle millions worth of foreign currencies at the airport. How does the Bureau of Customs stay ahead of these illicit activities? What measures are being taken to prevent them? Joining us live this morning at the BNC studio is Assistant Commissioner and Spokesperson of the Bureau of Customs, Attorney Vincent Phillip Moranilla. Good morning, Attorney Vince.
Attorney Karen, good morning, and good morning to all your viewers.
Let's start first with smuggled vehicles. So what started this? How did the Bureau of Customs uncover the smuggled vehicles?
We've been profiling smuggled luxury vehicles for quite some time now. As you know, we did this operation last year, and even the year before that. For this year, we've been profiling this since I think late last year. We've been seeing posts in social media about people selling all types of supercars and luxury vehicles. And of course, once we see them, there's a team inside the Bureau, especially in the intelligence group, that looks at this data and compares it with the Bureau's own data. That means which cars were actually declared with us, what were the duties that were paid, and if there are any derogatory information already received by the Bureau. Now, given all this information, an intelligence report recommending for a certain action to be taken is given to the Commissioner. And if that is approved, and then of course we do visit these warehouses through the exercise of the visitorial powers of the Commissioner.
Mm-hmm. So they have been using social media to also sell. I think that's a bit, I mean, how do you say this? Parang napaka-brazen naman, di ba? Na it's out there. So when did you start detecting that there were smuggled luxury vehicles that were being sold in the market?
Well, in the second half of last year, we've received derogatory information from certain individuals and certain groups about luxury vehicles being sold in the market, and questioning the landed cost. The landed cost, of course, is together with the computation of the landed cost would include the duties and taxes that were paid with the Bureau of Customs. Now, given the information given to us and looking at the landed cost reported by this intelligence information, and looking at the data also of the Bureau of Customs, we verified the information and looked into certain warehouses and social media posts, and this was and this information was validated. So when it was validated,
yes,
we had to issue certain courses of action. We had to issue letters of authority to make sure and validate further the information given to us that was validated also by our own data.
So you use social media. What about in BGC? There's usually a congregation there of luxury vehicles in the weekends. Do you use that as a starting point also to do an investigation?
Yes, because it's all over social media also.
Talaga? So
yes,
the people who basically show up there with luxury vehicles, they also post on social media?
Well, if they don't post, there are, I think, social media personalities whose content would usually involve the luxury cars that are being flaunted in the BGC area and the other areas as well. So once that is detected, we look at the models, and there's a corresponding check that's being done against the data in the Bureau of Customs.
How much support or collaboration do you get from the authorized dealers? Because at the end of the day, they are also affected by these smuggled vehicles.
Oh, we get their full cooperation. In fact, some of the complaints come from the authorized dealers because they're the ones really greatly affected. And we want to support our authorized dealers, the legitimate industry that are pouring in investment and work for our people through these dealerships. And when certain smuggled vehicles are brought into the country and sold at a very low price, then these industries are affected. So in terms of supporting them, this is one of the ways that we support.
And it's not fair to them because they're paying the right duties for these cars.
Not just that, they're paying the right duties and they're paying their internal revenue taxes when they sell these cars.
Yeah. So for these vehicles in the first place to be smuggled in, is there some type of also collaboration internally with the Bureau of Customs? I mean, paano nakakalusot?
Well, we have our system as well, no, to check these items, these smuggled luxury vehicles at the port level, no. But as you know, we can only do so much in terms of trade facilitation also. When we balance between border protection and trade facilitation, just like in any other customs authorities all over the world, there are a certain degree of these items that can go undetected. Meaning when we check them, our parameter sometimes recommends a check that only involves documentation. And when there is a play in the documentation and actual units, especially variants of the units, are not thoroughly checked, then sometimes, of course, they're able to evade the payment of duties and taxes. That's why we apply a three-pronged rule. No? Number one, we get information coming from the source country. Number two, we try as much as possible without affecting trade facilitation to do our border checks. And if both doesn't work, then we have a third method, which is now the exercise of the visitorial power of the commissioner. So even if you are able to go through customs and let's say, for example, play with us through documentation, there's a third check that we do, and that's the actual check that we do when you're already in the market.
But can you say that internally, in the Bureau of Customs, you're confident that walang collusion, meaning there are no smugglers that collude with people who work in BOC so that when they get inspected there, hindi sila mahuhuli sa pag-smuggle or pag-underdeclare ng mga luxury goods because they can declare it at a lower value. That's another way to smuggle them in.
Here's what we do. Well, when we do have these kinds of apprehensions, there's a backtracking investigation being conducted by the intelligence group. And those who are involved in the processing are made to explain how the documentation was analyzed and how was this assessed. If the explanation is satisfactorily and given to the intelligence group, then no liability may be attached to the customs officer. But if there is a liability or there are lapses found in the investigation, then appropriate administrative charges and other sanctions are given to our employees.
Can you share with us if you already know the identity of the owners of the warehouses where the smuggled luxury vehicles were found?
Yes, but of course there are still follow-up investigations that are being conducted. A few are Chinese nationals with Filipino partners. We'll reveal the names once charges are formally filed.
So charges are not yet filed. They're preparing for that.
Actually, they're given 15 days to present their full documentation so that we can review whether payment of duties and taxes were indeed paid. And when I say payment of duties and taxes, payment of the correct duties and taxes. There's also an avenue for them under our existing rules and regulations. If we find out that the only really issue is deficiency in duties and taxes and no fraud is actually established, then they can actually settle the deficiency by way of an administrative proceedings. No? Of course, there's a little bit of fine, but again, at least they'll be able to settle whatever obligations that they may have and get back the cars or the luxury cars that they originally bought.
Okay, so these are for the owners of the vehicles as well?
Yes.
So have there been instances where you've prosecuted the owners of the vehicles, the buyers of the smuggled luxury vehicles?
Only if it is established that one, they were also the true importers of the vehicles, and they participated in any wrongdoing, especially fraud, in the bringing in of these smuggled vehicles. Second, even if they are buyers, they were not buyers in good faith, meaning they bought the items knowing fully well that there were deficiency duties and taxes or there were fraudulent acts made
So knowing
in the
fully well
importation,
that the
of
cars
course.
were smuggled?
Yes, because they're not only liable under customs law, they might also be liable under other laws as well.
Right now, would you say that this is still rampant, the smuggling of luxury vehicles?
Well, I think we've done our part throughout the years to try to mitigate this exercise of bringing in luxury vehicles through technical smuggling and other tax avoidance and fraudulent means. No? But looking at how things are still being sold, I think there's still a significant portion of people who are actually trying to bring in supercars and luxury vehicles through fraudulent means, maybe through fraudulent means or some other schemes that avoid payment of the correct duties and
well,
taxes.
the price difference is really large. Like if you buy from an authorized dealer and then from like what you can get for smuggling it is a huge difference. So, sino ba talaga ang mga normal na buyers? Like in your experience, who are the buyers of these smuggled vehicles?
For us, it's really a wide array of people. Some would usually be young entrepreneurs who made money maybe in a booming business, not knowing fully well what the implication of buying a luxury car and in a not authorized dealer is. So some would usually be experienced owners of luxury cars already. But one thing is common: all the ones that we apprehend and establish the ownership to these vehicles have money. Meaning, if there's one thing that they have in common, they have the capacity to pay the correct duties and taxes.
Have there been any politicians that have been linked to buying smuggled vehicles or being directly involved in smuggling luxury vehicles?
So far, based on the representations in the Bureau of Customs for these luxury vehicles, we've not encountered any politicians.
Has there anyone who has gone to jail for smuggling luxury vehicles or buying smuggled vehicles?
We'll have to check our records, but we have convictions generally for the cases we've filed for smuggling. I'm not sure if one of them involved smuggling of luxury vehicles, but all I can say is that there were even in the past, numerous complaints filed before the Department of Justice involving individuals involved in the smuggling of luxury vehicles.
What's going to happen to these vehicles that have been seized?
Well, first of all, we'll evaluate the submission of the owners of these vehicles. If they're qualified to avail of our voluntary payment program or our buyer in good faith program, then they may do so. We'll provide them with that option to settle the deficiency duties and taxes with some fine, and then that's the end of it. They can recover their vehicles. Now, if they're not qualified, it will be seized and forfeited in favor of the government and will be put on auction.
On auction, hindi sisirain. Because in the past, under former President Duterte, during his administration, there were several luxury vehicles that were destroyed. So right now, hindi naman ganun yung policy.
Hindi ganun yung policy namin ngayon.
Kasi sayang din naman, no? So at least in this case, the BOC auctions it.
Yes.
And then the amount goes to the Treasury.
Yes, it forms part of the national coffers.
When it comes to auctioning, is there a way for smugglers to profit from it? Like, meaning they can participate in the auction, or how do you screen the people who participate in the auction?
That's one loophole that we've looked into. That's why now, before people can participate in the auction, there's a background investigation being conducted by our intelligence group. And the background investigation involves verification with other law enforcement agencies as to the personalities involved or representing to be a participant in the auction, whether as a member of a corporation or as an individual.
Let's go to another type of smuggling. So the other day, there was a person that was caught by the custom as trying to smuggle different types of foreign currencies while departing the Philippines. Can you give us details on what happened here and what was the final destination of this person?
We're still checking the final destination of the person because we're thinking that the destination is a transit country.
I think that was Hong Kong.
Yes, and Hong Kong would usually be a transit country. So we're checking if Hong Kong is actually the final destination for these currencies. There is a misconception that smuggling only happens when you bring in goods and not when you bring out goods. But there are regulations that prohibit individuals, especially not just Filipinos, but individuals in the Philippines bringing out currencies. For example, for Philippine currencies, you can't bring out Philippine currencies more than 50,000 pesos.
Yeah. I remember before it was even 10,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was increased already because of the economic structure. But again, you can't bring out any form of denomination of Philippine peso more than 50,000 pesos. And there are also restrictions for other currencies. Restrictions in the sense that if you bring in other currencies up to a certain amount, then you need to declare. You don't.
Is it also the equivalent? Like, for example, if you're bringing over $1,000, you have to worry about converting that and then thinking, okay, I'm exceeding the 50,000 peso limit, or it's really based on the currency?
No, it's based on the currency. The 50,000 peso limit is not based on the value. It's actually based on a security feature that certain number of those currencies, when brought out, might be used to replicate our currencies.
So it's an issue more of not just the smuggling or
Yes,
money laundering,
yes.
but the ability to counterfeit.
To counterfeit
the money.
or manipulate or use these amounts, large amounts of the Philippine currency for some economic
economic sabotage. Yeah.
Some economic crime.
But for the other currency, so I think here we're showing the photos of the actual seized foreign currencies that were being smuggled out. We have euros here. Paano mo malalaman ano yung limit allowed? Although here it looks like it's really obvious that they're smuggling out a lot of foreign currencies kasi napakarami talaga. But for those personally traveling, how do you know what's allowed?
Well, there's a regulation issued by the Bangko Sentral, and I think it's available in their website. People can just easily look into it. But the most basic thing is what you're allowed to bring in is usually what you're You're also obligated to declare when you bring out. So that means if you're only allowed $10,000 or that equivalent in other currencies when you bring it in, and anything in excess you'll have to declare. That holds true also when you bring it out.
So in this instance, the person that you caught smuggling out foreign currencies is a Filipino.
Yes, he's a Filipino national.
Did you find out what the intention was, or is this still under investigation?
It's under investigation, but we're looking also into some illegal currency trading activities in the other country. But the primary office that would be in charge of this investigation will be the Bangko Sentral, and we will fully support their investigation.
Have you looked into whether this has any links to POGO operations?
In the past, there was. That's why we intensified our illegal under our currency smuggling program. In fact, we are one of the agencies that was instrumental in the lifting of the Philippines under the red list in the FATF list. So we're not the Philippines is no longer in the red list in terms of currency smuggling and laundering using currency smuggling. No? So that's why there's a very strict program now being implemented by the enforcement group of the Bureau of Customs, who's in charge of this particular smuggling activity.
For individuals that are caught not declaring the currencies that they're trying to bring out, what penalties do they possibly face?
Number one, they can be held accountable in violation of the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, particularly the provisions on illegal importation. They can also be held liable under regulations being implemented by the Bangko Sentral when it comes to bringing in currencies and not declaring them. No? And
So
there are implications also on additional investigations by the Anti-Money Laundering Council.
What happens to them? Can they go to jail because of this?
Yes, a lot of them actually are facing criminal charges before our courts.
So for this person, because he's caught in flagrante delicto, meaning carrying the undeclared currencies, is he currently being held in custody in prison?
Yes, I think he will undergo custodial investigation. And then once a case is filed, I think all the cases filed involving this is bailable. Then he can opt to file bail and face the charge.
When the NBI discovered 270 million pesos worth of contraband cigarettes that were up for resale in Tarlac, the Bureau of Customs announced that heads will roll. What has been the result of BOC's internal investigation on this matter? But before you answer this question, we'll have to take a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. Assistant Commissioner Vince, when the NBI discovered 270 million pesos worth of contraband cigarettes that were up for resale in Tarlac, the Bureau of Customs said that heads will roll. What has been the result of BOC's internal investigation on this matter?
Well, concerned officials has been called by the investigation division of the Bureau of Customs. There was a series of hearings that were conducted this week, and we're just awaiting for the recommendation of the investigating body, internal investigating body of the Bureau of Customs, on possible liabilities of concerned personnel of the Bureau of Customs under this particular situation.
So there are really some BOC officials that were involved.
There were investigations being conducted. Of course, they're going to be given the chance to explain certain allegations being hurled against them, especially in the process of us condemning or destroying these cigarettes and what happened to this process. There are also private individuals, specifically those employees of the accredited service provider of the Bureau of Customs that's supposed to destroy these cigarettes for us, but were found to be involved in the entrapment operation of the National Bureau of Investigation.
So in this case, the Bureau of Customs hired or contracted out the destruction of the illicit cigarettes. Bakit kailangan pang i-contract out? Why can't BOC itself destroy these cigarettes?
That's how we do it, because the one that recommends for the type of destruction would be the regulatory agencies. In this case, it's the National Tobacco Administration. So the National Tobacco Administration recommended for a certain process of burning these particular cigarettes. No.
Are there any sanitation concerns? Because I find it as a ordinary person, I'm thinking just in terms of cost, meron nang nahuli na illicit cigarettes, pero gagastos pa yung government by paying a third party to destroy them.
It's not just sanitary, it's also environmental also. So there are environmental, sanitary, and other concerns. No, that's why the regulatory agency, which are supposed to be the experts in the field of these products, are the ones that are given the option to recommend what type of
Method is
method
required.
is used for what we call, the technical word for doing it is rendering, for the rendering of these items. And the recommendation was, I just forgot the technical term, but it's actually burning through a particular machine to contain the environmental effects and effectively destroy the illicit cigarettes.
Why can't you just auction off these cigarettes? I mean, they should be easy to the market.
Two things. Number one, they were apprehended because they did not they did not have the necessary regulatory permits. And when we say permits, it's not just about having the nod of the government in doing business. It's also about evaluation as to the safety of the use of these items and other standards that are being implemented by the Philippine government. So
Are some of these cigarettes fake? Like, would they pose a danger also to people that might use them?
some have found to have that effect. That's why we continuously warn the public not to use illicit cigarettes. There were rendering activities, no, or destruction done by the Bureau of Customs in the past, where we used the common method of just actually trying to destroy these items through normal burning, and then some with some chemicals. And you can easily detect that there were chemicals that were in those cigarettes that are very harmful to the public. After effects of the smoke would even irritate the skin of our personnel who was conducting the destruction.
So that's why you really need an expert
Yes.
for the rendering.
Yes.
Are cigarettes one of the highly smuggled goods in the Philippines?
It has become.
Apart from it's vape as well.
Yes,
one of
vape
those
and illicit cigarettes. I think because of the high rate of taxes that are imposed on tobacco products. So there's really a benefit to smuggle them and sell them at a very cheap price.
Well, let's talk about other items that are being smuggled. How are the efforts of the BOC when it comes to fighting agricultural smuggling?
If you look at our anti-smuggling effort, smuggling of agricultural products is one of the most, it's one of the items that is most seized by the Bureau of Customs.
What items? Before there was an issue with onions.
Yes, so we were able to apprehend onions. We were able to apprehend millions worth of mackerel.
Mackerel?
Yes,
Okay.
illegally imported in the country. In fact, these mackerels or these fish, when evaluated by the Department of Agriculture and found to be still fit for human consumption, were donated to the DSWD.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
At least hindi naman nasayang.
Ang ginagawa naman namin, if there are agricultural products that still can be evaluated or tested by the Department of Agriculture, and if they're tested, they're found to be fit for human consumption, we recommend naman for donation so that they can be given to the less fortunate members of our society.
What countries normally are the sources of these smuggled items when it comes to agricultural products?
It will have to depend on what type of agricultural product. So if it's rice, it's of course usually Thailand, Vietnam, or Cambodia. If it's onions, there are onions coming in from India, China as well. Vegetables, China would be one of those. Cigarettes, of course, the Golden Triangle countries, Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam. So.
Unmarked fuel, that was also one of the items recently seized, I think in the Bicol region. Is this also common to have smuggled fuel enter the Philippines?
Yes, that has been an issue with us for the longest time. And it was effectively addressed. And I say effectively because the volume declared to the Bureau of Customs increased significantly. In fact, it doubled. And the payment of duties and taxes as well was increased when we implemented the fuel marking program.
So the fuel marking is something that, how do you know that it's marked? I mean, for consumers, it's a concern, right? You're
Yeah.
paying for fuel, yung pala smuggled, and then you don't know the integrity of the fuel you're putting in your car.
We do random testing with gasoline stations. So when we do testing against gasoline stations, our team of testers test their stocks for markers. Because if your fuel is tax paid, there's a corresponding marker being placed there. So this is a chemical product that's being placed in the gasoline or any other petroleum product. And when it's tested and it tests positive, and that means that the gasoline is tax paid. Now, if it tests negative, then we seize the gasoline or the fuel.
So random testing.
Random testing,
Yeah,
yes.
I guess it's difficult to just test all the gas stations all the time.
There's a, what do you call this? There's a scientific method of actually reaching that through this random testing that is being done by our enforcement group. And eventually we will be able to do so. It's just that, of course, with all the gasoline stations, it will take some time. But eventually, we will be able to test all the gasoline stations, the depots, even at the level of the lorry or the trucks that are being delivered. There are testings being conducted there.
Are the big names, like the more common brands for gas stations, also being tested? Or as consumers, are they generally the ones that are reliably safe and authentic?
They're being tested.
They're
No
also
one
being
is exempted in the fuel marking program. But of course, these big companies won't risk their reputation by bringing in smuggled fuel.
So historically, wala kayong nakikita na smuggled fuel or fake fuel that goes into the big brand names?
So far, we have not.
So what has been some of the efforts right now of the BOC to ramp up your security procedures in order to prevent smuggling? Ang dami ninyong problema with all these different types of smuggled items.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a problem. I think it's a result of our intensified efforts. No, I mean, you see us in the news left and right apprehending a lot of items. It is because we have a very active anti-smuggling program. No? And a testament to this is the 80 billion peso worth of smuggled items we seized last year. And for this year alone, for
80 billion means all types of goods.
Yes, 80 billion
so it's
pesos.
a mix of different
It's
types
a mix of
smuggled
different
goods.
type. Number one of which are counterfeit items, and of course, illicit cigarettes, agricultural products, luxury vehicles. For this year, for the first 2 months, if you compare it to the amount of smuggled items we've seized last year for the same month, there's already an increase, a significant increase. So we don't really mind being in the news as long as we're in the news trying to apprehend all these items. And again, it's not an issue for us because I think it's a normal effect of a very stringent and comprehensive anti-smuggling effort that we're undertaking.
Assistant Commissioner Vince, over the years, the Bureau of Customs has gotten a rap for being one of the most corrupt agencies. So it's always been a label for the Bureau of Customs. Is corruption within the Bureau of Customs still rampant? And how are you curbing corruption within the agency? But before we address this question, let's take a short break. At the Forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the Forefront. Assistant Commissioner Vince, the Bureau of Customs has always had a reputation for being one of the most corrupt agencies in the Philippines. Is corruption within the Bureau of Customs still rampant? And what is the agency doing to curb corruption?
I don't think it's rampant anymore. No? But I will not say that there's no corruption in the Bureau also. Of course, there are people within our ranks that would still think that they can get away with it. But the good thing is we have a very active and we have a very active commissioner, which is one of the priorities is to revive, no, it's not revive, but to at least reform the image of the Bureau of Customs from that particular image to one that is global and that addresses the concerns of the Filipino people. In fact, one of the initiatives that we did is that we formed an industry consultative advisory council. So every month, so we formed a customs industry consultative advisory council, the members of which are all the organizations and the business sectors that are dealing with the Bureau of Customs. Every month, we meet with them where there's an exchange of the issues that are confronting them and what are their suggestions for the Bureau to improve. So we're espousing transparency now. We're engaging our stakeholders more because we think if we engage them more and we encourage transparency, then all the loopholes that are being made as a haven or opportunities for corruption are going to be addressed. It's going to be identified and it's going to be addressed. And that's what we're doing now. Through this industry consultative advisory council, we're able to look into the issues of our stakeholders and plug those holes.
And can you give us an example?
Well, like for example, if there are...
For a specific industry that there has been a recommendation through this council and the Bureau of Customs has now initiated like a specific program to address a gap or a loophole.
Well, let's say for example, in our accreditation process, before, we also get documents that were already approved by other government agencies. Now, through this consultative assembly, we were able to identify the repetitive documents being submitted to other agencies and also to the Bureau of Customs, for which we can just actually look into the submissions of other government agencies and take them as a submission also to the Bureau of Customs, so that
at least cut the red tape.
Yes, so at least the stakeholders won't have to resubmit those items to them. We were able to sit down with our stakeholders, tell them our apprehensions, why we're doing it. They gave us assurances on why they're submitting it also to other agencies. We're able to coordinate with those agencies for mutual recognition of these documents. And now we're able to cut down the required documents and able to cut down the time frame for which we approve any applications for renewal or new applications for accredited importers.
What about modernizing efforts? Is the Bureau of Customs also having any progress when it comes to computerization of your processes?
We have. In fact, internally, our own IT team digitalized about 97% of the processes in the Bureau of Customs. The only issue that we have now is that we need to modernize our central customs processing system. Because even if we actually digitize all these processes, if they're not within a centralized processing system, they won't be able to talk to one another. And as much as we want to, the process won't be as cohesive as it should be. So that's what we're being confronted now. Although we've digitalized 97% of our processes, still we need to improve our customs processing system. And this is now the subject of a legal case. We've tried to...
Oh, is this the computerization program of the World Bank?
Yes, we've tried to do it through the World Bank project. Unfortunately, an old case brought against a losing bidder with the Bureau of Customs was placed at the forefront and affected this particular project that we were trying to put forward. Now we're waiting for a resolution coming from the Supreme Court, hopefully in our favor, so we can jump back and modernize the customs processing system.
But the Bureau of Customs can't do that on its own. Do they have to wait for this Supreme Court ruling?
Yes, because there's an injunction issued against us.
That's a pity kasi tagal na rin na delay,
Tagal na
no?
rin, yeah.
But when it comes to other efforts, like AI is something now that's highly available. Is this being looked into in terms of like other processes? Like one of the parts or the processes of the Bureau of Customs that's highly susceptible to corruption is checking the containers. And that's where you have an opportunity to underdeclare items that you're bringing in at the port, for example. Is there a way to put in AI so that they can scan and then you take out the human element?
Yes, our scanners are actually being prepped for AI capability. There is a little AI capability right now for some of our small scanners at the airport. When I say a little capability, they have the ability to, well, in normal parlance, to remember images that went through them and were apprehended. And these same images, when replicated by other unscrupulous individual in trying to bring in these illegal or illicit goods, there's a certain portion in the system of our scanners that would help them detect this again. And we're trying to capitalize on that and improve our scanners to be able to be capable of having artificial intelligence. And instead of us trying to manually, through training, detect illicit items through our scanners, then there should be some sort of a system using artificial intelligence to point out to us some things that we might miss out.
Yeah, or even verifying, right? Like kung tama yung dineclare ng person checking, like a customs checker, and then as to what's really in a container.
Yes, cross-referencing AI is one thing that we're also looking into. And that again, is connected with improving or modernizing our customs processing system.
But that's good to hear that you're all looking into this. Would there be sufficient budget for the agency to come up with all of these modernization programs?
Yes. In fact, the budget was ready. If it were not for that legal case, we would have pushed through with modernizing the customs processing system.
Okay, that's very unfortunate. What about items that are being sold online? So there are a lot of items that sometimes flood the market that are being sold online, and some of them are fake, counterfeit items, or perhaps the product of smuggling as well. How do you detect them, and how do you then enforce against products that are being sold online?
We've just actually, our intelligence group just actually formed a special office for that. It's called the Cyber Intelligence Enforcement Group. Now, that cyber intelligence office or service by the intelligence group focuses on those kinds of things. No? We've been flagged so many times of illicit items, smuggled items being sold online. You won't believe it, but in one Senate hearing, our attention was even placed by illicit cigarettes being sold online. So to address all those, we've formed an office specifically tasked to look into this, apprehend and prosecute illegal and smuggling activities being done online.
Last year, the Bureau of Customs had a large collection. What was the amount of the total collection?
900, I'm not sure of the final figure, we're still reconciling, but it should be around 940 billion pesos.
Wow. So is the Bureau of Customs confident that this year your collection would increase even more with all the measures you've put into place?
Yes. Last year we were, of course, we had to take some sort of a sacrifice in terms of our revenue collection for the greater good of the country. Specifically when Executive Order 62 was implemented. And these are reduction of tariffs for all sorts of goods. We were hit by one of the main products, our main revenue drivers, which is rice, by this particular executive order.
Because of the tariffs.
Yes,
okay.
it was reduced from 35% to 15%. The revenue loss there for us was estimated at about 12 billion pesos. But again, that's okay. We just needed to really adjust because the intention there was to really bring down the prices. But this year, since we're already prepared, we have a full year to prepare for this, for the impact of these tariff reductions. We're very much confident that we're going to hit our target this year, which is
what?
A record-breaking 1 trillion
Wow.
60 million pesos.
Well, I think if you are able to implement all of these measures to curb smuggling, then you've hit your target.
Yeah, we've been hitting it since 2019, and save any reduction or any negative forecast in the macroeconomic assumptions of our economic managers. I think we're very much confident that we will hit the target this year.
Thank you so much, Assistant Commissioner Vince Moranilla.
Thank you, Atty. Karen.
The Bureau of Customs' intensified operations against all forms of smuggling is a firm stance against illicit trade and tax evasion. The agency's efforts reflect a broader push for transparency, enforcement, and border security. As smugglers become more sophisticated, the challenge now lies in sustaining these crackdowns. Those responsible should be given maximum punishment so that would-be smugglers are reminded that illegal activities are not worth the profit. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news, always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for meaningful conversations that would help you form an objective personal opinion. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Thank you for spending your hour with us.